Hi, my name's Irrelevant, and unfortunately, I want to restring this guitar in a slightly different tuning and a slightly different gauge. That means the excruciating process of setting up a Floyd. I've probably forgotten more than some people know about setting guitars up, and that is applicable in this situation because it's been a while since I've had to do this. I don't play that much guitar anymore, so my strings last forever. And of course, because I'm using Floyd Roses, they barely need to be tuned. We're going to start by pulling the locks completely off. One of the most important rules of Floyd Rose bridges is you always run them locked. You do not run them unlocked. I don't care what your buddy says. I don't care what your guy at your store says. I don't care what your favorite musician says. Floyd Roses, you run them locked. Period. If you run them unlocked, a couple of things happen. One, strings going back and forth through the nut. It's gonna carve that channel deeper. You see, guitars that don't have the locked floating system, their nuts are made out of material that's designed to allow a string to move smoothly through it and not wear down. These things, the mild steel they're made out of, it's just gonna saw a channel deeper. The other thing is the vibrations of the string end up carving serrations into the nut. And that makes a condition in which you're gonna break strings more often. Or, you know, you can go ahead and buy yourself a nice Floyd Rose guitar and run it unlocked. And then when you wear it all out and then it won't stay in tune anymore and it's all dicked up, you can sell it on eBay or Kijiji for dirt cheap, and then I can buy it and then I can set it up properly, and then I score myself another guitar for dirt cheap, like half of my other friggin' guitars that have Floyd Rose bridges. Now, often I might consider changing the string one at a time. In this case, this guy needs a good cleaning too. Another important point to remember is always use well-fitted Allen keys. Sometimes it's nice when this thing's not in place. I don't know, what do you think? Do these go into recycling or do they go into garbage? I'm not sure. They're metal. I think they should go into recycling. Missed! Alright, now that that's all off, we need to clean up on her a bit. I use Dunlop 65. I don't know what's in it, but it's been a go-to guitar cleaner for a while now. It's hard to clean underneath where the strings are on a regular basis, so sometimes when you pull off the string, that's the only opportunity you really get to muck it out. Now you're gonna want to use this opportunity to make sure certain things are tight. Maybe snug up on the neck bolts here. Yeah, see, they did lose a little bit of torque, just a touch. You might find these guys got a bit loose on you too. And like a good metric piece of machinery, of course, it's 10 mil. Oh, something else I forgot to double check. That these were tight. Oh. Here's the new strings. As the story goes, I have had this guitar for many years turned to standard B, and recently I set it up to drop A sharp because a band I was jamming with was set up in that tuning. But even at that, I don't want this guitar set up like this. I'm setting it back up to the standard B, which I prefer, and I'm gonna be putting on 52 gauge strings. I had 49s on it before, and it played well. You see, the significance of an XL scale guitar, that's what Ibanez calls it, is from nut to bridge saddles, it's 27 inches. A standard guitar is only about 25 and a half, and then Gibsons are even a little bit shorter, I think about 24 and a quarter. Now, what that means is with the same given string tension, the string can resonate at a lower note. So you can set this guitar up down to standard B and it feels like you're playing a guitar in standard E, and you can use lighter gauge strings to boot. If you set up a normal guitar in that tuning, you would need minimum like 56 gauge strings from my experience. And that's light. Some people are going 65s or bigger in order to maintain low tuning on a standard scale guitar. This guy, you don't need to do that. You can go lighter tuning. I had 49s on here, and it felt and played just like my normal guitars, which are tuned to standard D with 42 gauge strings. Yeah, I go a little bit light, but I'm bringing this up to 52 now. Now on Floyd's, because of the locking situation, I like to feed the string in backwards. It's a bit silly, but it's the way I like to do things. Usually because I have D'Addario strings and little cute colored balls look neat hanging off the end. So I start by feeding it in the top and then under. I give a little bit of slack here. It's the way I like it. Then on this end, yeah, about the end of the saddle, chop. Gotta loosen it up a bit because it's a bigger size string. You can see what I mean. Sometimes if you look closely inside the saddle, you can see the serrations getting ground in there. At some point, these might need to be replaced too. Bottom out the string, try to center it as best you can. And snug her up. Do not over torque her. Bring her in firm. On this end, you're gonna notice something. I haven't done any wraps. You don't need them. Even a guitar with a non-locking system, you don't need them. I just turn it until it naturally hangs up. Now we're in the preliminary stages here, so we aren't gonna give her on this thing quite yet. We're gonna move on to the next string. And actually, I'm gonna put the smallest string on. Again, I'm gonna put her through the tuning peg, under the little, you know what? I don't remember what those things are called. Now I'm going to allow for a bit more slack because this one is going to start to wind itself naturally. Doesn't look like I have much to cut off here. Again, poke her down there, center her nice, and firm her up. Now one of the reasons why I put the small string in first is because it's gonna pull up on this crossbar. This crossbar is just sitting down there. Now that I have these two strings, it's gonna hold this crossbar up in such a way it's gonna make it easier to get the rest of the strings in. And again, no wraps, just start turning her. Now let's move forward. The 42, which is a good string for E. In repetition now, putting her through the hole. Here's some needle nose pliers, they're advantageous. A little bit of slack to taste. Chop her down just after the saddle. Let's get her in her hole. The rest of the process is going to be repetitious now, so I'm gonna fast forward through it. Now, it's worth noting that if you are restringing your guitar with the exact same gauge of strings and the exact same tuning and even debatably the same make and model of strings, what you're gonna do while you have them off is you're gonna double check these intonation nuts, because these things are little disasters if they come loose. There is nothing holding the saddle in its intonating position other than that nut. So every time you restring, you want to check to make sure those guys are still tight. Again, don't over torque them, just firm them up. But that will prevent you from losing intonation. Now you're probably asking, why, oh why, do I not wrap my strings? Well, it allows for better tuning stability. It's a technique I actually found works very, very well on normal guitars that don't have locking systems. You see, one of the things that prevents good tuning stability in a guitar is all those wraps around there stretch, and that coil will elongate and tighten over time. And as you play, it lets more slack over the fretboard and you lose your tuning. The less wraps you have around your tuning peg, the better tuning stability you tend to have. At some point, as you're tuning and stretching, yes, they're gonna slip. But at some point, you're gonna tune and stretch and it's gonna stop slipping. You're gonna reach terminal tension. And at that point, you find they're not gonna slip anymore. And then that's when I do the little bend on the other side to lock them into place. Now in the case of a locking system, we don't have to worry about that much, so it gives an overall cleaner look. And once we lock it, this area completely gets negated. The one thing to consider is, talking about negating things, is it negates one of the really good features about a Floyd Rose, and that is the ability to fix a string quickly on the fly. Often when strings break, they break down here by the bridge, right? So what happens on a Floyd Rose? Well, you just unlock the nut, pull some of that slack through, lock the new piece into the bridge block, and then retune it, and off you go. And you don't even have to tune all the strings, just the two you unlocked. Back in my heyday, if a buddy broke a string on stage and he was playing a Floyd, I could grab his guitar and I could have the string fixed before the song was over. Or, you know, maybe in time for the next song. Unfortunately, by not keeping slack around the tuning pegs, you don't have the ability to do that. If I break a string, I break a string. Fortunately, I rarely, if ever, break a string. So, I go for the aesthetic. And now, the irrelevant fun time ban prevents to you. The most annoying part of process when working on a Floyd is tuning. I forgot to grab a pick. You gotta remember, you gotta get that bridge back up to tension. You basically just have to keep cycling through until they all synchronize. Now what you want to watch out when you're doing a profound string change is the bridge level. So what's starting to happen now is the bridge is starting to pull up like this. The tuning that I had before didn't put as much tension on the system as the tuning I'm going for now. So I'm probably going to have to go in here and tighten the springs. If you see, my bridge is definitely starting to go off level now. So before I continue further, I need to adjust the bridge. Two spring wonder. So if you're not aware, these large screws here on this spring assembly, that adjusts your bridge tension. You need to tweak that until it's level with your given tuning. I see I only have two springs in there. I might possibly want to add a third. We'll see what happens. And you're going to notice I always stuff a little bit of foam underneath the springs. That helps stop them from resonating and it prevents excessive feedback. Yeah, I need way more. From the looks of it, I'm definitely going to need another spring. We're going to need a hook tool. And of course, I have an app for everything. You don't need to use a hammer. Now I can tell just by looking at it, I gotta bring the adjustment screws back. Now what do we have for tuning? Ooh. There's entirely way too much tension on it still. It's all part of the problem-solving process. Now it's starting to go up too much. Now I need to tighten it. It's a very fun back and forth process. No getting out of it. Now, for the first time, it's all in tune. And we find the bridge still needs to be a little tighter. And now, the bridge is falling too flat. Fun times. That's the fun of doing a profound tuning and string change in a Floyd Rose. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until you finally zero in to where you need it to be. Just a little bit more. All right. I don't think it looks level on camera, but that's a lighting issue. It's damn near perfect to me now. Here. Now that we have the tension on spec, check the neck. Actually, yeah, the truss rod looks like it can use just a touch, just a hair, just to say. I got a little bit of that bowing where the geometry here is a little bit lower. So it's like straighten the truss rod out a bit, bring out the action. Change the geometry a bit. This guy needs a specialty tool to adjust that truss rod. Now it's a question of remembering where I put that tool. Ah, yes, the good old man organization system. As long as you don't move it on me, I'll always know where to find it. However, in this case, I keep all my guitar stuff generally together. So, tighten, quarter turn this way. And I think that's all it needed. Almost instant results. So tuning up the action now, eh? Tombo Man organization system. Where did I just put that Allen key? Allen! Allen! Oh, I think I raised the action a bit too high. Okay, so we got a level bridge. We got the action where we want it, as good as we can get it. Would be nice if it was just a touch lower, but then it buzzes too much. So now it's time to really tune this guitar. Before you start this process, you should kind of reset the bridge back to center. All these back to like center points, with maybe the big string a little touch deeper. And to really tune it, we have a situation where it's time to stretch out the strings. So we give that a nice firm tug, indeed. A nice firm tug, and we're gonna find, oh, it went down to A. And you're gonna find that it's gonna change every time you give it a tug, but each time it's gonna change a little bit less. Let's move on to E. Oh, look at E, flopped right out. We're pulling that slack through the tuning peg now. Ah, see what happened? I gave it a tug, it barely went out of tune. We're gonna give a little bit of a tug on this low string. Be careful tugging on the low strings. They will break if you're too rough on them, especially if you're using smaller ones. Oh, look at that, it stayed. Now at some point you might face diminishing gains, because what happens is you might stretch on this and then it causes the bridge to sink. That might loosen these strings, pushing slack past the nut, loosening their coils, causing them to go out of tune. So you could be tracing the dragon back and forth, doing this forever. It's probably already taken me close to 20 minutes just in stretching so far. I'm over an hour into this process so far. I gotta warn you ahead of time, setting up a Floyd Rose is not for the faint of heart. On average, it could be about 2 hours before you can sit down and enjoy playing your guitar again. But look on the bright side. If you set it up right, tuning stability on it is so good, you might not have to work on it again for who knows how long. Now, if the note looks like it's too high, instead of down tuning it, give it a pull. Yeah, I think I'm at that point of no return. Every time I tune up one string, it just throws the rest of them off, and I'm running in circles here. The strings are probably effectively stretched at this point. You can tell where if you give them a little tug, they almost go back into tune. I'm in guitar tuning hell right now. And it is cause for celebration when finally you go through them and they've all relatively maintained their tune. So, intonation is the part of the process that you're pretty much screwed unless you pick yourself up one of these puppers. You need a specialty tool to properly intonate a Floyd. It attaches onto the bridge like so, and in this case it hangs up on the back of the lock. Then you have to get underneath the string, release this nut, tighten it just enough so that it rides well, but loose enough so that it can be adjusted. And of course, because of the nature of a floating bridge, you can't do it like this. You have to have it up in working position. Looking at the tuners, we have to get our B to be a B again. Have to check the intonation. Oh, wouldn't you know it, it's on. Well, that's sweet. Let's lock her into place then and move on. It looks like E is still relatively on. A is a touch off. A is a bit high, gotta move the saddle this way. I think I was going in the wrong direction. That happens sometimes. This has taken so much focus for so long, sometimes your brain fades. A little bit more. Now, you have this situation where if you loosen this too much, the saddle's gonna sit all weird, and that might not give you an accurate result, so you gotta kinda loosen it to make sure it moves freely, and then snug the nut back up so it sits right. And at one point you have the opportunity to move the screw a whole nother slot down, hopefully without the nut or bridge coming out. Alright, I think I got it. Don't worry, if you feel like you're in the twilight zone of tuning, it's just how you know you're tuning on a Floyd. How's D? D's good. How's F sharp? F sharp's good? I think B's a bit off. before you judge if it's a bit off, go through, retune the guitar all over again until everything settles, and then retest it. Yeah, B's a touch off. There we go, now it's on. Just needed a touch. Take that tool off. Oh, we might be breaking a record here. Now, once we get the tuning as close as possible, for the first time in human history, we get to try locking it and see what happens. See, look at the scoring in these nuts. Eventually that's going to lead to tuning problems. And for the record, the pivot is in the middle. You see how the peak is in the center? They don't go this way, they go this way. That allows it to pivot to evenly clamp down two different size strings. Now a final tune. I'm gonna go ahead and refall these guys back. Finalize their positions. Oh yeah, those little ones are a bit long. Oh well. Some people might not like that. Now the part that I'm afraid of, because if you did it right, you can wham on it, and it should still be in tune. Ooh! That B's on, that F's pretty close, that D's on, that A's on, E, B. So from here, you're gonna have to play it a bit. The strings might still need a little bit more stretching, so after playing a little while and maybe screwing around with the whammy a bit, you go through, unlock it, tune it again, and then put her back together, and then fine tune her, and then it should be good. At this point, I believe I can play this thing now. There's a little bit of buzz, but if you want a low action, sometimes it's hard to avoid unless you have a really posh custom fret job. So for you guitar geeks, a little bit about this instrument. It does not have the model number on it. I don't remember the model number of this thing. It's an Ibanez RG Japanese made, which is nice. It's got the nice logo where the shiny bit is underneath the lacquer. It's a 27-inch long scale, 27 inches from here to here, so it's designed to be tuned low to like B. Actually got a really good deal on this guitar because a buddy of mine bought it with high expectations, but his muscle memory was so programmed to standard scale, he couldn't play it. So we ended up trading for a guitar that I had because, well, I'm just not good enough of a guitarist. My muscle memory doesn't care. In here I have an EMG 60, 60A, and an SA because I needed at least one pickup that could do maybe clean. The three-way switch is pretty much burnt, 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 because I don't really mix pickups, and these guys are non-splittable. The 60 is actually a really good pickup. I enjoy it. I think it's as good as the Blackout. The 81, I'm not a huge fan of the 81, but the 60 and 60A are actually pretty good. Of course, this guitar is basswood. I hate basswood, so I could never get it to sound right with passive pickups. Force feeding it with EMGs was the best results I could get out of it. Now, I think I'm gonna go play on it a bit. I don't know, man. Either way, playability is how I remembered it to be, and the tuning stability is there. I've been playing it for about an hour now, and it sounds fine. All the notes are hitting right where they should be.